Hey everyone, welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. I'm Brian Doyle, and with me are my co-hosts, Rob Rogers and Tim McNeil. What's going on, boys?
How you doing?
Living the dream, sir.
That's it. Another great day in the neighborhood, right?
That's right.
You know, they start blending together sometimes, don't they?
They do. They do. It has been crazy. It's June.
Yeah.
It's
It is June. And hopefully it'll still be June when we actually play this. But with that being said, as always, as I always like to say, nobody's here to listen to us ramble. They're here for our guests. And today we've got a very special guest joining us. We've got Michael Beecher with EscapeWire joining us today. And, I've had an opportunity to work with Michael a little bit in the past, and I'm glad he accepted our invitation to join us today and tell us a little bit about his story and how he came to be. So, Michael, welcome.
Welcome, sir.
Happy to be here.
Good to have you.
And Rob, thanks for you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, Michael, we'd love to kick things off by first learning a little bit about you and kind of your journey into where you sit today. You know, what brought you into the great little sphere of MSP and the community that we're all a part of?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll give you a thumbnail of it because it's a longer story than anyone wants to listen to. But I actually got started in a family business that my family owned, construction and industrial equipment. And I was tasked with computerizing our company when I got there, which is shortly after college. And I had a good friend in the IT industry, computer networking at the time, a lot of Novell stuff and good stuff like that. And I hired him to computerize our offices in our business, and we were high school friends, so he kind of got started and got our business organized and helped us do that. And then in '99, we sold that business, and I was looking for my next opportunity and what I wanted to do. I live in Western New York State, Buffalo, New York. I had a young family at the time, and I didn't want to move. I wanted to stay. And I also wanted to be in a business that I felt was kind of open-ended in terms of growth and change. So, I didn't want to go into a traditional, no offense, but I didn't want to go into a traditional insurance type business or something like that.
Yeah.
So I went back to my friend who I had hired originally and said, what kind of opportunities are there? And he said, we got a lot, and I'll bring you on if you want. And I said, love to do that. He was partners in a bigger company. And he said, I'll bring you in as a systems engineer. And I said, Mike, I'm a sales and marketing guy. I do not do systems engineering. Don't worry about it. We'll train you and then do it for a couple of years. And if you like it, you can stay, or you can maybe go on and do something different, maybe in sales and marketing for us. I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I walked in the first day into the computer room. There was 6 or 7 guys in there. I didn't know anything or anybody. And one of them handed me a laptop and said, F disk that, loaded with 98, and then we'll get you going. And I looked at him and said, I have no idea what you just told me.
Those are some really fancy beeps and clicks right there.
So he looked at me and said, who did McCarthy hire? Like, what is this? And luckily, they seemed to take a liking to me. They took me under their wing. They showed me the ropes. I learned by a lot of self-taught. I studied my rear end off on nights and weekends. And I, got my MCSE and Windows NT4 and all that good stuff. And, I found, being assigned to technical clients, I was just kind of naturally selling them stuff as while I was there. Well, you need to do this, you should do this. And eventually the company, the other partners came to me and said, Mike, why don't you move over to sales and marketing? And I said, I don't know, I kind of like the tech stuff. And they're like, well, you can do that too. I'm like, okay. So I moved over. I spent 5 years there. In 2004, my original partner, my original friend who hired me, and I decided that we were going to depart and do our own thing. We left. We started a company that went through a couple twists and turns. Ultimately, we split that company up about 3 and 4 years later. He had different interests in the IT world than I did. I took what was the nascent MSP at that time, and with a small group of guys. He went with another group of guys, amicable, and that was 07-ish. We worked out of a friend's joint offices. I had a friend who, by the name of Chris Hartnova, who had started a company called EscapeWire, coincidentally enough, at the time in about 2003, a year before us. And he was doing a lot of hospitality IT. His partners and family were hotel developers, and they were tasked by the brands at the time to go put the guest internet access in, whatever that was. So these guys said, well, either we can hire it out and find somebody to do it, or we can maybe start a little business within our business, which they did. And Chris ran it. And so we worked out of the same offices for a couple of years, 07, 08, 09. And then towards the end of 09, we said, maybe better together than just apart, sharing offices. So we merged the company together in 2010, equal partners. And that's the genesis of where you see EscapeWire today. So we do some hospitality work, a lot of MSP work, a lot of security work. And I continue to run it with my partner today, 12 years later, and here we are.
Awesome. It's always great to hear the journey and how people got there, and then those little twists and turns like dividing partnerships. We've had quite a few people that have unfortunately gone through that process of dividing a partnership and the challenges that go with. Sounds like yours was a little bit amicable, which is good. We've heard otherwise sometimes, but it's all steps in the journey to get us to where we need to be, right? And it's also probably the first time we had somebody refer to the MCSE on our show, which is great, because I remember we talked about that all the time back in the early 2000s. And it's just one of those terms that, shows how our community had changes and we have to adapt continuously, right? Those
certifications. The gold standard.
It was the gold standard, and now it's a long forgotten friend, right? But let's transition a little bit into what you're doing today. So, what's the current form of EscapeWire looking like, and what are you guys really working to do within your community?
Yeah, I mean, the current form is, continue to be a traditional MSP. Nothing earth-shattering there. 2 years ago, we, a lot of it driven by clients of ours who were, in regulated industries, insurance, financial services. Requirements were starting to get more intense for security, cybersecurity purposes. I was getting calls all the time, Mike, I got this audit I've got to fill out for my insurance underwriters. I need some help. New York State had come out with their new cybersecurity laws back a couple of years ago, and a couple of clients were calling me and saying, I don't know what to do here. What are we going to do? I naturally just started to help. As that progressed, and then New York State launches the SHIELD Act, and we see this kind of tide coming. We decided to develop another essentially program or service offering in the company focused on security. I led that charge. We still consider that an infant in terms of its growth within the company, but we're doing a decent amount of that work now. It's more the conversations is really around security today, and more than it is around the traditional IT with all the clients.
Yeah.
So that takes up a large part of my time. We're looking to grow that, and we still do some hospitality work. The foundational piece of the company, it's a little smaller than it was when we first merged, but that's by design. And, that's kind of the nature. So some hospitality, but really traditionally an MSP, and adding that MSSP type services as well as sitting there too.
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing security first being the mindset of almost all MSPs and kind of the approach model. So, we expect to hear more and more of that as time goes by.
Yeah, for sure.
There's almost no other way to do it at this point, at least in our current state.
Now, nobody cares to talk to you about their servers and, Office 365. They want to know about what's my risk, what's my liability, how do I figure this out, where do I start? So yeah, it's actually been really kind of energizing, quite honestly. It's been fun to go back and develop a completely new service offering, and I spent quite a bit of time figuring out what kind of partners were we going to bring in? How are we going to deliver it? How are we going to price it? All those good things. It's been actually really interesting for me. And I've enjoyed it quite a bit. It's something new.
How long did it take you to kind of build out that product, that the whole new thing that you were doing? It sounds like you really, took your time and did it slow and methodical and correct. So how long did it take you to make that transition there?
It probably took us about a year. It was kind of in the midst of the pandemic. I'd started it before all that nonsense got crazy. That definitely slowed it. We had a focus on, our bread and butter and making sure our clients could figure out this transition. But, I was continuing to work on it. We slowly kind of built pieces here and there. We found a way, a partner that we wanted to do risk assessments and how that was going to come together. We found the tool sets that we wanted to use. Zero trust platform, web filtering, all those good things that we've kind of wrapped together into a bundle. So it really took about a year. And then, I had a couple clients that were natural fits for it that weren't too hard to close. And then, the rest of the clients, now there's probably a dozen that are taking this product, this program that we have. And it's not hard. I mean, they're all people that are asking for it. I'm not having to convince them too hard. And then really just this past year in 22, we actually started to have our first clients that were security only and approached us as a security company. We've just done a law firm, and we're not the IT guys, we're the security guys. And they've got an outside IT consultant. And, we oversee the security. We give him, his kind of assignments when the vulnerability scans are done and say, we need you to clean this up, and everything else. And it's kind of interesting to see, maybe that'll continue.
We're hearing more and more of that going on within the industry too, because of the fact that we need that separation of church and state between the service providers sometimes and those that are kind of overseeing security. So, we talk about it all the time. It's a great opportunity to open up some sort of compliance as a service line or VCISO as a service type offering within your business. Yeah,
we've actually, for a couple clients, we actually brought in what you consider a competitor to be our third party independent to look at us. We've got a insurance underwriter, we've got a big law firm, and there's a lot of exposure there. And we kind of said to them, like, I think we need someone to watch us, and it would be good for all of us. And then it gives us all the ability to kind of protect all of ourselves. So we brought a competitor in, and we have a good relationship. We respect each other's roles, and they'll do the vulnerability scans. They send them to us to clean up, and we work together with them to make sure that the client is in that secure position, and that's ultimately that's all we really care about. We just don't want that client to be in a position where they're at risk. So,
isn't it funny how I came into the industry and on the sales side in 2009, right? And Rob, I think you were 11. The thought of partnering with another MSP to help out a client on purpose, was it just wasn't even considered.
No way.
Now,
I still hate them. I don't even live in the same state.
Yeah. But now just because of the regulations, you almost have to. It's amazing how it's changed the industry, and especially over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, a common part of my conversation with clients is, depending on where you feel you're at, depending on what you feel your risk and a vulnerability is here, if we feel like we need to bring in a third party to assess me, we will. And not everybody has this same level of requirements. They just need the better coverage. But again, there's instances where it's appropriate. Have a good relationship. It's okay.
You know what? It makes everybody better too. I mean, that's the reality,
right?
Security right now, and we're seeing it with the ISOs that are, continuing to form, and the information sharing requirements out there that, if we don't work together as a community and, invite our competitors to help us understand where the exploits are early, we all win or lose together. And I think it's offered a lot more partnership throughout the community and a little bit less of my territory and yours. We're trying to drag Rob along onto that with kicking and screaming, but we'll see where we go there. But, Mike, another thing we love to chat about here on the show is those transformational moments that you experience. And it sounds like, you kind of shared the high level of a couple transformational moments in your past. But if I were to ask you, what's the one thing that really changed how you viewed your career or the success within your business? Can you point to a specific, challenging moment or success that happened that really, accelerated growth for your organization? Or even just you personally, quite frankly?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I could point to a couple things. I think there was a period when we first started the company that we were all kind of young, and we weren't very systemized. We didn't have a lot of process. We were just kind of computer guys, and we were going out, and I was selling, and I'd have 3 or 4 guys who were doing the installs. And we had a medical practice that had been a longstanding client, and they were probably one of our biggest customers at the time. And the power pole outside the building got hit by a bus, and it knocked their power out, and it surged. It caused a surge, and it took out their main terminal server. And they had like 50 people on this terminal server, and they only had one. There was no backup, and the server just got wrecked. And it was one of the times when I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't sleep, and I remember getting up in the morning knowing it wasn't going to get any better anytime soon, and we just weren't mature enough to be able to help a client assess risks, understand about disaster recovery and redundancy and all those things. And we limped along on it, and we finally got it resolved, but it took a long time, and it was very painful. And I remember they came to us and said, well, I was very open with them. I pulled all the partners, the doctors into the office. They said, listen, I think, quite honestly, this is our fault, because I don't think we sized the power APCs well enough, the UPSs. And I think that's the reason. And they were very happy that I was honest with them up front. It's always the way I deal with it. And they said, well, what are we going to do about it? And I said, well, first of all, we want to be less reliant on directly loaded servers. We want to be able to do virtual servers. This was, back 10 years ago. We weren't doing any VMware at that time. It was all, load Windows on your HP and away you go. And if the box is having a problem, like, you're going to be you got to live with it. And backup disaster recovery was brutal. It was Zenith Infotech boxes, if you remember those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, holy moly. And they worked sometimes, didn't work out. They were better than anything else that was out there. It was either that or tape, and DLTs and all that nonsense. And they came back and said, you know what, I think you're right, Mike. We appreciate it. Let's talk about a virtual environment. I said, great. I need some time to work on that. And they're like, how long do you need? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to probably need 3 to 6 months to figure this all out. Like, well, we kind of wanted to do it like within the next month. And I was like, I'll do that. And I remember being at my house, and I got an email from the practice manager that said, Mike, we made a decision to move away, and we're going to bring in another client. And my heart sunk. And what I realized about it is that we weren't keeping up enough. We weren't building enough process and maturity in our company. And if we were going to compete and be good at what we do and be confident in what we do every day, that we really had to get out in front of these types of changes in our industry, backup disaster recovery, virtualization, now Office 365, SharePoint, Teams, those are the things that where those inflection points that can really change a company. And now we're thinking about what's the next inflection point for EscapeWire. And the next inflection point for us, as far as we think it is going to be acquisitions. How are we going to grow the business? Organic growth, as we all know in this industry, is difficult and slow. We want to combine some organic growth with acquisition growth and drive growth that way going into, the next few years. So those inflection points are things we look for constantly to do that. Security was another one.
Yeah, and I think it's the new age of the MSP, right? Because I think, to your point, we always got to adapt and change. I certainly remember that transition into the virtualized world. I was still within my MSP days at that point in time. And when you look at the future, and we're hedging some bets on it, it's really around the partner being more of an advisor, the partner being involved in the business, the partner understanding where risk lives, the partner understanding where automation gains can make a company more efficient, where analytics come into play, and those MSPs that are starting to gravitate to that will succeed. And those that continue to hang on to the old model will find themselves either dragging behind or unfortunately falling into the situation. And trust me, Michael, what you described there, I think every MSP had that moment too, where a client walked away and they realized the only reason they walked away is because of us, right? And we need to make a change in order to not let that happen again. But first, I should thank you for sharing that story, because it's got to be tough to revisit sometimes too, right? But on the other side,
I have PTSD from that.
I can believe it, because
still gives me chills down the back of my neck when I think about it. It scared me to death, and it caused me to say I never ever want to be in that position again today. I mean, we made a decision about a year ago that we said within 36 months, so we're 12 months into it, we're going to eliminate 75% of all on-premise servers at all of our clients. And we're going to put them all in a combination of Microsoft 365, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive. And if they need some if they need servers for, they got a line of business app that's not going to do it, we'll put it in Azure, but we are not going to be relying on that hardware anymore. It happened today. We moved a client, a long-standing client. We moved them, a couple of years ago, we did Office 365 for mail, moved them up. Perfect. They had a small business server. Then we, just in this past year, we shifted the entire company. This is 65 users, 4 different offices are spread across the Northeastern United States, shifted all their shares out into SharePoint and Teams, and nothing's really left in the server. Today, the server went down. Now, it's not doing anything really, but it was doing DHCP. So, I called back to the office after the managing partner of the firm called me, and I said, switch DHCP from the server to the firewall. Let's get this done. And let's move on here, because we'll deal with the server later, but they just got to be up. And I walked back in the office. I'm like, thank God.
Yeah,
thank God for sure.
What used to be an all-day or multi-day event just became a 10-minute conversation, right?
Yeah.
And
So much easier, right? So much easier.
It's funny. We did 4 or 5 months ago, somewhere in that neighborhood, we did a podcast specifically on how, just when you make a mistake, the best thing to do is just go to the client and say, hey, we messed up. Here's what happened. Here's what we can do to fix it moving forward. I mean, we did a whole podcast on it. And unfortunately, a lot of MSPs don't do that. They try and cover their tracks, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So even though you lost that client, which sucks, you still did the right thing by the way you approached it.
I teach my kids that every day. My son lives in Chicago. He just graduated from college. Phone rings. He's like, Dad, I had a fire pit on the ground and I decided to bring it up on the deck, and we were going to have the fire pit and the TV on the deck and watch some acid. And I said, oh, really? He's like, yeah, I think I burned the deck. I'm like, oh, really? No kidding. And it's a rented house. And I said, I want you to show it to me. And looked at it. It wasn't too bad. I'm like, Michael, here's what you're going to do. You're going to call the landlord personally on his phone. You're not going to text him. You're not going to email him. You're going to call him directly right now. Explain to him what happened. Tell him what you wanted to tell him. You're going to be responsible for it. You will make it good. And he said, Dad, he's going to kill me. I'm like, just do it and call me back. And he did it. He said, he was actually kind of nice about it, Dad. He said, thanks for calling me. I really appreciate it. And we'll take care of the deck. Sounds like it's maybe just a couple boards. We'll be fine. So you learn, right?
Yeah.
It's an old adage, bad news doesn't get better with age, right? The more you take on and the more you tackle right up front, usually the better it is.
Get them hard and deal with it.
Yeah, like that. With that, I think we'll now turn it to our new returning portion of our show.
So look, I'm gonna switch up at least one of these to make it Buffalo focused. Just
okay.
So all right. So the first one is talk, text, or Teams.
Teams.
Yeah. Meetings in person or remote?
Remote.
Okay. All right. Rock, rap, or country?
Rock, rap.
Rap.
Oh, rap. Rock.
Yeah.
Rock.
Rock. Okay. All right. Duff's, Anchor Bar, or other? And if other, what?
Other.
Which one?
Coles.
Brendan's on Transit. It's the best. Brendan's.
Oh, well, Brendan's is owned by Coles. It's the same group.
All right.
Same family.
Fair.
That's a family.
Fair.
Yep.
Okay.
It's the same thing.
That's funny. I did not know that. And if you were to do one thing outside of the MSP space, what would it be?
That's a good question. What would I be doing if I was not doing this? I don't really know. I mean, I really enjoyed this work. I've always enjoyed it. I hope to retire doing it. I hope to retire doing it and really retire and just disappear somewhere to Hilton or somewhere. I don't really care where it is. I mean, if I had to do something, if something blew up and I had to change my life, I'm a sales and marketing guy and I love that. I love interaction with people, and anything that's going to put me in front of people and allow me to communicate and be like that. I'd be good with that. So yeah. sales and marketing.
Well, thank you for sharing, all your backstory today, and certainly giving us some food for thought on, hey, if you're an MSP and things aren't working, you got to adapt quickly, and don't leave yourself vulnerable. Those are my key takeaways from today. Robb, Tim, anything else you want to add before we close out?
Nope, I'm good.
Yeah, I
Right.
think just it was impressive. It's always impressive how you saw the need to make the change, especially to the MSSP. We're seeing more and more people do it. The forward-thinking ones.
Well, we haven't solved it all, and we have a long way to go. So there's plenty of runway here, and we're trying to figure out how to navigate that. So that's the next step.
Yeah, still making the right step though.
You also made Tim's day, because anytime we have somebody from upstate New York who loves hockey on the show, he is the happiest guy in the world.
What else do you need?
Well, the fact that you know Brennan's, I mean, that's good enough for me.
One of my faves.
Yeah.
So that's it. Hey, Robb, I know you were having some technical difficulties, so I'll take us home today. So, for everybody that's out there listening today, you can get this episode up on our website. You can get it on YouTube, because we have that as well. And of course, it'll be anywhere you get your podcasts. Mike, I'd love to thank you for joining us today and certainly sharing a little bit about your background and story. And we look forward to seeing you again down the road, and listening and seeing all you listeners down the road as well. With that, I say thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for coming on.